Hello, have you thought recently about how conscious you are about your money? I'm always working with people on these money date programs. I take them on and I'm talking to them about being conscious with money. What does that mean? Does it mean anything to you? I'm going to have a consciousness expert on today to help us understand what being conscious with money really is. Your relationship with money matters. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is the Money and You podcast, where I will be breaking down your relationship with money, offering tough love money tips, and a money dating plan that will focus on lifting the barriers to success to help pave the way for better money practices and increased wealth. It's time to take control to live a limit-free life. It starts today. Hello, and welcome to the Limit Free Life Show. Oh, I'm sorry, the Money and You Show. I still go back to when I had the Limit Free Life Show, but we're now doing the Money and You Show. And so that's what we're doing today. And I have a fabulous guest, and we're going to talk about money in a unique and interesting way, like we always do here at the Money and You Show. Liz Gracia is our guest today, and she's a serial entrepreneur and a Renaissance woman of sorts, a chef, interior designer, product designer, floral designer, retailer, wholesaler, catalog producer, graphic and web designer, video producer, unwitting mystic and healer, student of consciousness and the science of truth, and a digital marketing expert. She's been successfully building businesses and consulting business owners for over 25 years. Since 2009, my guest, Liz Gracia, has inspired hundreds of conscious small business owners and solopreneurs to reimagine, uplevel, and leverage their businesses with intelligent investments in their online marketing efforts. Those investments include professional website design, so you look great, paired with expert SEO, and a brilliant SEM content marketing strategy so you get found consistently and generate highly targeted leads for your business, and personal branding so that you are clearly aligned with your target audience and your intentions for success. These services are all offered under the website, theathenaarena.com. Her experience and understanding of digital marketing and the challenges small business and aspiring solopreneurs face with online overwhelm, along with her interest in awakening, consciousness, and self-healing, led her to the development of the MindBodySpiritNetwork.com and her podcast, Your Weekly Dose of Higher Consciousness. And that's really where we're going to land today. We're going to talk a lot about consciousness. I thought this was fascinating, and I couldn't wait to talk to her about consciousness and how it relates to money. So Liz, welcome.
Thank you, Michelle. It is my pleasure to be here.
Well,
I love this conversation and this topic.
Yes, me too. And we spoke the other day, and I was so excited to get into this with our listeners because it's such a fascinating topic. And I also just want to highlight to people, because a lot of times we have career changers listening, we have business owners listening, we have people just interested in their finances listening. But I really wanted people to take in the number of things that you've done. And, I hope that inspires people to maybe worry less about trying something and transitioning and to see what's possible, because I feel like people get so trapped in the thinking that they have to choose just right when it comes to career and stick with it, and of course there's a level of sticking with it that is certainly beneficial. But I love that you've done so many things, and I think it just reflects a really full life. And so I don't know if you want to give it. Well, first I'd love for you to give us a little background, and then maybe a comment on on that.
Well, I can comment on that, and I've always had this intention that when I die, I want, not that I'm going to have a gravestone anymore. Who needs that? You just go up in flames and call it a day. But died a Renaissance woman. So I'm like, I'm on my way to that. And, I'm a mystic too. So I'm definitely a Renaissance woman.
Yeah, I love that. So if I can ask you a quick question about those transitions, were they all intentional? Were you or did you fall into them? I mean, how does a person do that many things?
Oh, well, it's funny. When I kind of fell into the restaurant thing, I was managing a restaurant on Nantucket for all through college. And then when I left after I graduated, the owner's like, when are you going to buy the restaurant, Liz? I'm like, oh, you told me you didn't want to. So that's how I got into the restaurant business. I ended up buying that. And it's funny with money, Michelle, when you're young, I think I paid $75,000 for it out of college. I did not have $75,000 as a 23-year-old.
Right.
And I didn't know how it was going to all come together, but it did.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So it was kind of interesting that I was not in my way as a young person. I'm like, I didn't even think about it. I'm like, I'm just going to show up in Nantucket. It's going to figure its way out. I didn't even think about it. Mm-hmm. So the owner ended up signing a loan for me at the bank, which at Nantucket, they're happy to sign loans back then. You know, it was a win-win situation on Nantucket, which I didn't know at the time. I didn't learn about cash flow until I moved to Boston.
Well, that's great. I love that. And I love that comment that sometimes we don't know enough to be overanalyzing it or be scared of it for that matter. And sometimes that works in our favor. Yeah.
Yes.
So go ahead and tell us a little more about your journey and how you got to this point.
Sure. So Nantucket's a highly seasonal business. It's, 4 months and you're done. So like, what the heck am I going to do the rest of the time? And I was on Nantucket long enough to be inspired by artists, interior design, beautiful homes. And I'm like, oh, I want to do something like that. So I got a little bored with the restaurant after a few years, even though it was incredibly time consuming and taxing. And I ended up opening a home furnishings and gifts store type of thing that I eventually moved to Boston so I could have a more consistent year-round revenue stream than just the restaurant. So that was my next step. And then during that period, I got into internet marketing in 1999 when I realized I had this really big at the time email list of tourists that loved the store.
Interesting.
And I'm like, how am I going to sell? I got to sell to these tourists besides more than once. So the web deal started to evolve it was seriously the Wild West.
Yeah. Yeah. I love
so
that.
I taught myself how to build an e-commerce site with, tools that are not easy, like Dreamweaver and learning to write code and all this. I mean, that was not my cup of tea, but I wanted to build a website. And when I did, after all the time I put into it, I'm like, how the heck is anyone going to find it? So that's when I learned about search engine optimization and my journey to becoming a content marketing and search specialist. Like, okay, you don't want to spend a whole boatload of money on a website without doing search first. Make sure what people are looking for and how you're going to communicate that. So that was my first dip into internet marketing. And then life threw a wrench in me and marital issues ensued that I was oblivious to. And this is where I had to wake up and realize, okay, this marriage is over. I got to navigate on my own somehow. And that's where a quantum spiritual awakening occurred, experienced. And I can only, people are like, what the heck is that? I'm like, you'd know it if you had one.
Yeah.
So that kind of led me on this journey into consciousness because I know that what I've experienced is not usual. It's not of this world. It's rare. I was incredibly blessed to experience what I have. But on the downside, it was horrifying because it's a swing in consciousness, essentially.
Right.
And this led me to the teachings of Dr. David R. Hawkins, who wrote Power versus Force. And an easier book for most people to understand is The Map of Consciousness Explained. So which is what I'm going to introduce you to today, and understanding that everything that ever was and is can be calibrated as to its level of consciousness, meaning what's the energy that's held within it, right? And and that can be, you and I, all of us can be calibrated as to our level of consciousness. And I love to use Debbie Downer and Susie Sunshine as an example.
Okay.
Because it's very clear who Susie Sunshine is, right?
Right.
And Debbie Downer. Debbie Downer's got the gray cloud. Susie Sunshine is bright and light and fun. The energy of those individuals can be measured, which is super interesting. Same with the energy of money. And anything related, things that would be interesting to viewers is like capitalism has an energy to it. It's highly positively oriented, by the way.
Interesting.
Very high. It's high. It's of higher consciousness. Capitalism is when you realize the benefit that it provides to the whole planet. Like, in order for big business to provide what the infrastructure is needed requires capital, right? And how can you participate in that? See, when you understand the true definition of capitalism and how it relates to everything that we have in our lives that are highly beneficial to us, you can any negative perception you have of capitalists is coming from your own negative viewpoint or something running inside of you. So it's just interesting to realize, people can think capitalist certainly depends on personality, but the actual energy of capital is highly beneficial to the world. As an example.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. I love that you brought that up because, again, these words are so powerful. The connotations are so interesting and so diverse. People, like you say, have their own belief systems and ideas about things. And so these words immediately trigger a reaction, negative or positive.
Yes. So, and there's a lot of negative connotation to capitalists, which can be any type of negative perception is coming from a negative perception of yourself in reality, in consciousnness. And it's the energy of this trapped emotion within you that needs to come out. So you don't know any better. You're just being human, right? But the energy of this projection is a fuel of something that's negatively oriented that you feel about yourself, typically.
Right. Right. And you can see that in people who do carry around a strong negative idea about something. I mean, you can almost see that to them, this, you can, if you dig a little bit, you'll find out why, that person feels the way they do. And typically it is something that has a personal impact or something that's a personal insecurity or issue for them. Can you give a little example of what you're talking about?
Yeah. So I want to share, if you're feeling unworthy, as an example, or worthless, the energy of worthlessness is significantly lower than the energy of unworthy. So those type of energy fields within you fuels thoughts and beliefs that aren't true. If it's a negative perception, it's not true. In consciousness, like it's just your energy field. And typically when you're feeling low, like at a low level of consciousness, you don't appreciate people. You don't appreciate the success of others. And that's there was an indication to me when I heard that. I'm like, okay, I'm perceiving somebody negatively right now. And I'm feeling kind of bitter and resentful, really. And I'm projecting that onto them, which is not true. That's when you're operating from a false belief system and that you're not dealing with your own stuff, essentially.
Right. And that comes up a lot where people are just sort of doing a blanket statement around rich people, for example. They're all selfish and greedy and horrible. And
right.
Yeah.
That's a very limited and incorrect point of view in reality.
And of course, if that's how you feel, then how can you, I hear that from people and in the same breath, they're saying, but I really need to make so much more money. And, those two just don't go together. You can't.
They do not. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like opposite attractor fields. So in consciousness and consciousness research, these different fields of attraction are called attraction fields. So there's an attractor field for abundance and wealth, and there's an attractor field for resentment and worthlessness and unworthiness and loss of income. They're different attractor fields. And I loved that I really can't, listening to Dr. Hawkins, he's my teacher who wrote the books I mentioned earlier. He talks about every attractor field is simply, it's impersonal, created by our creator, divinity, whatever you want to call it, to give us this vast choice. Our choices on this earth are vast in consciousness. Mm-hmm. It's huge. And just as a quickie understanding, the map of consciousness is a scale of 0 to 1,000.
Wow.
And each point on the map is a logarithm. So 10 is 10 to the 10th power. 200 is 10 to the 200th power. And if you know anything about math and logarithms, the higher you go up to like 1,000 is quantum in nature. Mm-hmm. So it's huge. Mm-hmm. And we have so many choices on that map to choose from that once you understand consciousness and you can decide what field you want to align with, I like to say, just find the field you want and finesse the field, attract it. Like, don't let your head get in the way, mm-hmm. right? You're just going to decide, oh, all right, I need to align with success or wealth or happiness, whatever the field is. Mm-hmm. And just aligning with love and money is enough. Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting, Michelle, that most of the planet calibrates anything below 200 is a negative attractor field.
Okay.
Meaning it's a downward spiral. And it's not a judgment. It's just, it is. This is just the energy of what it is.
Okay.
It's like anger, resentment, bitterness, loss of income. Those are all negative energy fields that you become a magnet for if you give your attention to it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right? Money is not the root of all evil.
Yeah.
The energy of money calibrates at 205 on the map of consciousness. So anything above 200 is positive, aspect oriented, and constructive and helpful to all of us, which is good to know. It's like money is not negatively oriented at all. It's your perception of it. And if you want to perceive it as the root of all evil, guess what?
Yeah.
You're going to manifest the experience of that, which is no fun. I mean, why would you want to experience the root of all evil? No, thank you.
Right, right. And so if your current reality, because that's where people go with money, is, my current reality is I'm not making enough, or whatever it is, and I the word reality is another one that I could tear apart all day long, but for argument's sake, a person feels their reality is rather bleak. And they also don't want to just try to say things that they don't believe about how things are. How do you kind of move that energy?
Okay, I know how to move that. Because I understand when you have this negative perception going on, it's very hard to affirm something positive like that. Affirmations are a challenge. And I always question that until, I understand consciousness and I know how to get answers, and it just shows up. I'm like, okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. So what I understand as an example, if you want to experience more wealth and abundance in your life, a great affirmation, which I kind of learned from Louise Hay. I don't know if you ever heard of her.
Of course.
She wrote,
Love
You
Louise
Can
Hay.
Heal Your Life, right?
Yeah.
Hay House Publishing is huge. Her book, You Can Heal Your Life, has these simple affirmations that say, I am willing to release the need to be in lack consciousness. Mm-hmm. I'm willing to release the need to be jealous and hateful towards anyone or resentful for anyone with money. And that willingness is a high energy attractive field right there. Willingness is 310. I'm going to throw numbers out here, Michelle.
I love this map of consciousness.
Yeah, it's awesome. The map of consciousness is huge gift to this world to understand it. And it should, one of these days will be taught in elementary school because kids will get it. Like, oh, okay, I know where I want to go. Like, you show them the map. The kids are like, that's what I want, right?
Yeah.
Point to the map. That's what I want.
Well, and
No
I like what you
judgment.
brought up with willingness, because that is different than, we all think of being sad or being angry or, being loving. And those, typically are what you hear about when you hear about, the law of attraction or whatever is, this is a low vibration, this is a high vibration. But I love that you're bringing up that there are so many terms in between those that, and willingness is a great one because everybody can be willing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a very powerful attractor field. So like imagine inviting this magnet into your life of willingness. It's huge. 10 to the 310th power versus below 200 is a huge leap. If you look at the logs, that number is massive and the energy is huge. So a simple affirmation to start unraveling things is to say, I'm willing to release the need to be whatever it is, fill in the blank. I'm willing to release the need to be stingy, envious, resentful, bitter about money and my situation. And this starts to unravel the energy of it without forcing it. You can't force, I am wealthy when you're resenting it inside, right?
Yeah.
It's a conflict in energy, if you can feel,
Right.
So the first level of consciousness where you actually step into true power is courage. That's the first level. So you have to understand that in order to change anything that's negatively oriented, you've got to be willing to step into courage and accept what is.
So the courage is in accepting what is, or the courage is to go beyond that, or both?
Just stepping into courage in general.
Yeah.
So if it means stepping into courage about taking a look at what you really believe, right? It takes courage to look and like, you know what? I've been acting this way for a long time. I've been feeling unworthy and worthless for a long time. Even though I don't consciously feel it, I know it's running in me, and you got to feel it and like discover it, which is what I have done. And it takes highly conscious effort and intention to do so. But when you invite that willingness and intention into your into this practice, the energy, that magnet is right there ready to support you. So it's easier.
Right.
It becomes a lot easier.
Yeah.
And eventually you'll be able, when you can affirm something and feel good about it, like, I know I can make money. I know I'm a money attractor. You have the confidence. It's a totally different energy. You can feel the energy shift. So
yeah,
it's understanding, putting this stuff, money, I don't know if I said, is 205 on the map, which is the energy of money.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And then loss of income is 170 on the map. So like, and it's not a judgment. It's just a kind of do the math. I'm like, do the math. That's what I encourage people to do, and see where you're at on any topic for that matter, not just money. But typically money issues have to do with unworthiness, worthlessness. To feel worthless is 40 on the map. That's really low. That's the same energy as Hitler, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Which is
interesting
worthless.
little fact. Yeah. So when you're feeling unworthy, when you identify that, you become aware. And I agree with you. Becoming aware is, I guess being courageous enough to accept what you're finding about yourself. That is huge. Because we do tend to be very defensive about these things and give a million excuses about what's going on externally or whatever, and why it's necessary to feel this way. But that awareness, that acceptance, that courage. So, for example, you do lose income, you lose your job, or something's going on with your business where suddenly things aren't working anymore. what I'm hearing is that you can find yourself on that map, and then you can move yourself up into the higher levels.
Yeah. By just putting your attention, pick a level, whatever you want.
Okay,
Willingness is...
Let's pick the 170 when you lose your job.
170 this is the area of like pride is 175. Oh. Pride's a big problem for most humans.
Interesting. Very interesting.
I'm right there. I understand pride. Like my intention is to be generous and gracious, but I spend, like, as an example, my intention is to be generous and gracious, but sometimes I don't have the money to be that generous. And yet I am that, which is an energy of pride, which creates problems.
Interesting.
Right? You got to be realistic and accept, like, okay, that wasn't a good move. Let go of the pride and accept where you are, and just accept someone else buying you dinner, as an example. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the whole idea of receiving, where that comes in, because I do think that's a problem for people. I want to go back for a minute to pride, because when you were saying that, I bring up a lot the fact that we don't talk about money enough. You know, people come with questions and they're 45, 50 years old. And these are questions that could have been answered when they were 20 and made a big difference. But nobody's talking about money. I mean, I'm tired of hearing myself say it, actually. But I think it's a matter of pride. It's people are ashamed in some ways of what they maybe don't know. And they have this, you know, incorrect idea that everybody else knows it, and it's just them who don't. And so I do think it's a pride thing. We kind of go around acting like we know what we're doing and we've got it figured out and we're doing the right things, but we're not.
That's a problem.
That's a problem.
So understanding that pride is a destructive, attractive field. It's a downward spiral, which it's hard to recognize because so many of us are this way. And we think we're being maybe confident or self-assured. And if you're experiencing the negative, you know, the lack of money, you're not having what you want, it's an indication that you're letting pride or something or get in the way of that. And how do you remove it? Like, how do you release that? In my podcast, I discussed the mechanism of letting go, which is a friggin' superpower, but it's not for everybody, because you actually have to sit through the energy of pride, as an example, or resentment. That's, you know, anger. It's hard to sit through anger and allow it to pass through you.
Right.
Like, realize that this energy is old, for one thing. It's way old news. It's not present day. Yeah. It's old stuff that's coming out, and you need to kind of allow the energy out. And this is a good topic. I recently came across, and I've been aware of this topic for a while, but I finally hired someone to help me with it. I don't know if you've heard of something called the emotion code. No. Are you familiar with that, Michelle? Or
no, I haven't heard that specific term. So
okay. So this gentleman who wrote the book, The Emotion Code, has been teaching it and certifying practitioners for it for decades. His book came across my awareness because it calibrated at a high level, like 390 on the map. I'm like, that's significant, right? Okay. So the energy of this particular process is effective and has proven to be effective. And it's simple, super simple. So essentially what he's discovered in his research is that we all have a heart wall up around us, right? There's a wall up around our heart. 93% of the population has the heart wall, and he feels like the other 7% is young kids that don't know any better yet, right?
Interesting.
So depending on how deep that heart wall is, it will block what you really want, because you're trying to protect yourself. Apparently, the subconscious mind will put up these energetic blocks as protection, but in the long run, you got to learn to get rid of them because they keep you from everything you want. Love, receiving. That was the point, receiving. Yeah. Michelle, you asked about receiving. And if I know I've had a wall up in regards to receiving my whole life, like for whatever reason. So I'm working on releasing that right now, but it's super interesting that that heart is the receiver, the heart area.
Yeah.
And it's a superpower too. So understand that you got to learn how to release the blocks to money and your beliefs and thoughts about it, which takes some inner work for sure, which is why one aspect of the Athena arena is mastering your inner game. And how do you do it from this perspective? Like there's self-healing ways to go about it, and you can hire help. And psychiatry is, and psychoanalysis is helpful, but it's like a horse and buggy compared to some other methodologies that really remove those energetic blocks. There's energetic blocks to whatever you're experiencing. And I heard it loud and clear when I did I mention I had a quantum spiritual awakening? Yeah, okay. So during this awakening, I awoken to clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience. Are you familiar with all this stuff, Michelle? Or should I explain it a little?
You can explain it. Yeah, absolutely.
So clairvoyance is the ability to receive messages in your third eye right here. And typically I'll get them in the morning when I'm just relaxed and I ask a question, and then I'll see this flash of an image that answers it. I'm like, oh, Roger that. Thank you. But I also hear things, like I can hear, and it's not in my head, it's coming from outside me, as if you were speaking to me, Michelle, something like that. I can hear it like that. Messages from spirit or whatever the heck you want to call it, who knows? Spirit guides, they exist in consciousness. So I'm like, I'll go with that. Angels exist in consciousness.
Right.
So I hear things, and when I was going through horrific stuff, not of this world, I heard loud and clear, you are the creator of this experience. I'm like, oh, you're kidding me. How am I going to get myself out of this? So the first step in acceptance here, Michelle, is to accept that you're the creator of whatever you're experiencing right now, whether you like it or not. And it's not an invitation to disparage yourself, because that'll make it worse.
Right.
It's an invitation to accept, okay, I didn't know any better. I didn't know how I created this, but God help me uncreate it. How can I uncreate it, right? So it's a matter of understanding. That's why the map comes in handy. It's like, all right, Dr. Hawkins is like, just use the friggin' map.
Yeah. It
came to me for a reason, and untangle where you are. And when you're tangled up in those lower frequencies, it feels like Velcro. The ego is a Velcroic-like bind.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I love everything you're saying. I love the idea. I agree that everything's an inner game, including money for sure. And I love the idea of being the creator of wherever you are. I mean, it might be crappy, but it's still a better deal if you've contributed to creating it, because then you can contribute to repairing it or moving forward.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think that's great. And certainly when people find themselves in uncomfortable places financially, in their career, in their business, we can look back and see the decisions we made that may have contributed to leading us there. And sure, there might be other things happening. There can be pandemics or recessions or whatever that contribute. But we still make the decisions about many, many things. Or we haven't taken the time to learn certain things. I find with money, there's a huge lack of education out there about just basic financial, principles and management techniques and things like that. And then on top of that, even if people know things, this is really where I think your relationship with money comes in and is important, is just because you know something doesn't mean you're actually taking action to reach a certain goal. So,
yes.
Yeah.
And I found in my own life that when you're operating with like low level stuff, you don't have the energy or the awareness to take an action, which stinks, but it's true. So it's a good idea for listeners to realize that if you're running a pattern that you don't want, it's hard to take an action And sometimes you need somebody else to help you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right? Even though we like to rely on ourselves, at the high level, you always seek, go within and get the answers there, which is true.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're running super low patterns, you got to get higher consciousness help to get you out of it. And I love Albert Einstein has a quote, which you may have heard before, is you can't solve a problem from the level of consciousness that created it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You've got to solve it from you got to look higher.
Right.
You got to be the observer of the problem,
Right.
And then you observe it, that observational look at it. And compassion is huge, by the way, and understanding is huge in consciousness. To accept and forgive yourself for getting yourself in this mess.
Right.
Whatever it may be.
Right.
Accept the mess, forgive yourself for not knowing any better, and decide, all right, I got to get some help out of this. And I had a great example of this in my life recently. I'm taking a course on how to create a digital course. And the woman I'm learning for is of higher consciousness. I'm like, she's flying on a high frequency. Totally. And you need someone like that to keep you on the wave, because otherwise you go right back in the sinkhole pretty quickly, especially if you're used to the sinkhole on certain topics. Some topics are not a sinkhole for us and some are. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, really fascinating. I'm also just finishing a course on positive intelligence, which I have found fascinating. And one of the things that Shirzad Shamin is the author of Positive Intelligence and was teaching this course, and he talks a lot about the fact that coaching in general tries to, get you to find the answers. The coach asks the right questions, you find, the right answers within you, which oftentimes is the case. But then there are other things where, you just don't have the awareness of everything. So it does take somebody else coming in and helping you to find the answer.
Yes.
And so, to your point, I do think, again, I do think everything's an inner game, but that doesn't mean we can always understand our own inner workings, whether that's...
No.
Yeah.
I mean, our own inner workings are not linear, for one, at all.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And when you realize that, like I have, that we are way more than just this personality we think that we are, right? Mm-hmm. We're a creation of spirit with a vast past entering into a vast future, like an eternal future.
Yeah.
And I have, when you reach certain levels of pretty high levels of consciousness, you have revelations, which is very different than an epiphany or an intuitive hit. A revelation is huge and you almost don't know what to do with it. And I've had a few of them. But one that I've had at least 2 times is a revelation of eternity. And I was shown eternity like it was an instant.
Wow.
I'm like, okay, put on the brakes. What's the rush? Let's slow down and enjoy the ride, which was the message of that. Like, Liz, here's eternity. Let me show you. Boom. I'm like, holy crap.
Wow.
So you learn to appreciate that. Accepting where you are, wherever that may be, and intending to improve is enough. Because we get friggin' eternity. I mean, I can't imagine eternity.
Yeah. So interesting. Okay. Well, I mean, we could talk about this forever. It's such a fascinating topic to me.
Yes.
And, another thing that came out of that positive intelligence course is, and it goes back to what you were saying, every mistake, every whatever in your life that doesn't feel good can be seen as a gift or an opportunity. There are some exclusions for some areas like death, but which I love the way he talks about that. But it's more, that's in its own separate category. But if you think about money things, for example, everything can be turned into a gift and an opportunity. And a big part of figuring that out is what you mentioned, which is the compassion, having empathy, and going to that part of your brain that can it can find empathy and compassion for yourself, for others, for the situation, whatever it is.
Could I restate that a little, Michelle?
Absolutely.
Go to the part of your heart where the compassion and understanding is, because we're in a mental world, right? Mm-hmm. And the mind cannot hold a candle to the power of the heart, which is interesting to understand, right? Heart intelligence is huge. Mm-hmm. And that's come across, I don't know if you've ever heard of heart math before, listeners, or Michelle. Heart math is a significant understanding in consciousness of the power of the heart. And I do some little webinars about the power of the heart and how to align with it. And heart math teaches simple little tools on getting into a space called heart coherence. And I've had numerous experiences of the evidence of the power of it. And it's so simple, like connecting with the heart. It's a little meditation that they teach you how to connect with the heart and get out of your head, right? Which we could do real quickly, Michelle, or not.
Sure. And, really a big part of the problems people have with money is being too in their head. I mean, of course, there's such a practical side of money that we think that we should live in our head when we deal with money. But that is where the problems come into play, when people don't do what they know would help them. And so, I would love that. That's a great way to wrap up. So thank you.
Okay. This is a great little practice I started to do going into, I moved away from where I am for 2 years to near Boulder, Colorado. And I used to go to these, I knew nobody in the city, so it was brand new. I'm like, stepped into courage and was like, we're going to start over, try something new. So I go to business network meetings and I learned about this heart math exercise. And it's simply a meditation, which I would do in the car with your eyes open, right? You can leave your eyes open. And all you have to do is focus on your heart area. I choose the physical heart. I imagine the physical heart beating. You can just consider the heart chakra, which is green. You can imagine the green glow of the heart, however you want to imagine it. And start breathing in and out of the heart, which is easy to do because it's right near the lungs, right? It's like breathe in and out of the heart. And then you focus on one thing that you love, whatever it is. But make sure it's something that you really love and it's not something you think you should love or can't love right now, Maybe you're mad at your husband. You can't love him right now. You're interfering with the energy if you're trying to should all over yourself about what to love. So there was a period in my life where I could not love anything except for my pets and young children. Because life dealt me a challenging experience. I created it, apparently. We'll go with that. I'll accept that. So just find something that you love. And I choose my dog. So I focus on my dog. Each one of them, I'll say, Edie, I love you. And I love where you are a little rascal. And I love how you look into my eyes. And I love how you love to be chased, whatever it is. And just kind of think about everything you love about whatever it is you love. Maybe it's a hobby. You like baking cookies for your kids. Do it for a minute. That's it. And then I noticed when I would go to these networking meetings, I'd forget that I did it. And then I'd be engaged in this really fun, lively networking meetings, unusually different. And then at the end of the meeting, everyone would introduce themselves. There's 50 people at these meetings. And then at the end, people would swarm to me. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. With all these, oh, I love this, I love that. I'm like, okay, that is the effect of the heart. Huge difference. If you're going to do a presentation, I'll do stuff before I do podcasts, Michelle, so that I'm connected to, my intention is to connect with truth and powerful messages for the listeners, whatever it may be. And it's like, whoa. And then I'll go back and listen. I'm like, did I say that? Where'd that come from? You know what I mean? So that simple thing, if you're going to go to work, you got to manage people, is huge.
Thank
give
you
it a
so
test.
much for that, because it is huge. And I know it seems like a little thing, and how could that make such a difference? And, but I mean, maybe, hopefully people aren't thinking that, but if they are, I know for a fact that those types of things, you will notice it if you try doing it. The problem is, in just hearing it, it doesn't mean that much. Try it. And I would say try it before you sit down to engage with your money too. Before you go into that, nightmare of having to pay bills and look at things and get upset, do what you just described and even go into that activity in that space. And I know that, you'll interact differently.
Totally. You're going to, you're going into a sense of inner peace when you take that.
Yeah.
And if you love and appreciate everything that you do have in your life when you're getting ready to write bills, like, thank God I can pay the bill today, whatever it is, right? It's huge. And just one last little calibration. The mind is in the 400s, which is a superpower for sure. It's a superpower. So whatever you think is true. And the heart is in the 500s. So when you remember, it's a log. It's a quantum leap in power to align with that heart and get the hell out of your head.
Oh, I love this. Okay, that is so good. And so I'm really going to challenge people to try this. And then if you could tell us how to connect with you, learn more about what you're doing, listen to your podcast, and also this heart map has us, or this, if you can give us some ways to find that would be amazing.
Yes. In fact, Michelle, I'm creating a little PDF for your listeners.
Oh.
It's going to share some calibrations so that you can put into context where on the map is this particular thing. And I'll also have links to these as part of the Mind, Body, Spirit Network. I'm connected with these healers that have these alternative healing. So I'll connect to the emotion code, which is what I'm going through right now. I'm getting the heart wall removed. It's pretty interesting to witness and to read the testimonials of others that have done this. I have a link to heart math and how you can connect and understand more. I did a whole blog post about it so that you can do it. I think I have a podcast about it too, where I talk about it, so I can walk you through it. But I'll send you a link where you can watch a meditation. Just listen. It's like 5 minutes, if that. I do it in a minute. It's all I need when I'm in the car. It's like, get ready, get set. So if you go to the Mind, Body, I'm sorry, not that one, the other one. If you go to the athenaarena.com/Michelle Perkins,
thank you.
You will find these goodies that you can access, and you can find me there. And I'll have links to Your Weekly Dose of Higher Consciousness podcast is there. And then my other marketing, I have my marketing and mastering your inner game podcast is athenaarena.radio.com.
Oh, wow. Okay. I will put all of this in the show notes. And thank you so much. That's really generous. And I really appreciate that. It's great.
I'm happy to. I am a marketer now, so
I know, which we never even got to. We talked about talking about this money energy, and then we talked about the marketing, and we didn't quite make it to marketing. So maybe you'll
money is your topic,
me
honey. Let's talk about the money.
Yeah, that's true. So you can actually do the marketing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have some fun. I have some fun calibrations that are the same energy of money that would be fun to know. Which, do we have a half a second, Michelle, just to share it real quick?
Yeah.
You sure? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So I looked up these so money is 205, the energy of money. And these other things are also 205. This is a good one. Making your bed every morning.
Oh, yeah.
You want to align with money. Make your bed every morning. It's the same energy. The second one, which is very fun, is being sexy. The quality of the attractor field. Sexy is 205. So that's, why are people sexy when they have money? It's the same energy, maybe, right?
Interesting.
And lastly, this is one I love. The comedy show Friends is 205.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny that they include these things.
Yeah.
I love
so
that.
and you can get calibrations. This is a subscription website I belong to. It's called consciousnesscalibrations.com. there's a free subscription where you can get tons of free calibration. It'll start to align you with the truth of everything. Like, what's the truth relative to that? What's the power of this relative to that? It's good to know.
It's really good to know. That is so much fun. Okay. I love this. Well, Liz, maybe you'll grace us by coming back and talking about digital marketing one of these days. But this was excellent. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing this and coming on today.
Thank you for joining us, everybody.
Yeah. So everybody, thank you. And this podcast is brought to you from ubngo.com and Limit Free Life. And we love having you here. We're here streaming on all the podcast platforms, Limit Free Life YouTube channel, Limit Free Life Facebook page, and now Roku, which is kind of cool. And so we love bringing you these shows. Love your comments. You can reach me at Michelle, 2Ls, at limitfreelife.com. And thanks so much. See you next week.